All right. So boot camp, right? This is the Freedmen Party's boot camp. The goal behind this is to get more freedmen running for political office in elected office. So we have people representing us on the local, state, and national level. So it's broken into three parts. The first part is about politicians. Second part is about uh, freedmen policy, and the third part is about the Freedmen Party and how we can help with your campaign. So I'm not going to go again through all each video. You can watch that on your own time by going through the boot camp. The link is in the jumbotron. So how do you become a Freedmen candidate? Let's figure it out. Oops, I'm a little too fast. Go back a few slides. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of lag. Okay, here we go. And feel free to come up and ask questions as we go through. Okay, so elections. So the first part that you'll need to run for elected office is you'll need a EIN number, a tax ID number, and you can get that for free from the IRS.gov website. Basically, that EIN number will be unique to your campaign. You can use that to open a bank account associated with your campaign, which will be used to track your funds and report them to the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. Obviously, you need to choose your elected office. You can run on the local, state, or national level. Local seats include, mayor, city council, includes judges, sheriff, DAs, district attorneys, and more. State level, local also includes your House of Representatives since it's chosen by your district, your local district. State includes things like the governor, things like the state legislature, as well as your two senators for your state. And then last but not least, nationally includes your president and your vice president. There's something important called the testing the waters phase. This allows you to begin a campaign unofficially without needing to register with the FEC and allows you to see if you have enough traction and enough people behind you to run. And you won't have to register with the FEC until you hit that 5K limit. And that'll be kind of like proof that you have enough support. You hit that 5K limit. Once you hit it, then you register with the FEC. And basically, you fill out a form which includes your campaign name, what office you're running for, that EIN number for your tax ID, your bank account, uh, things like your treasurer, and any campaign committee, like a political party, for example. On the campaign side, once you register with the FEC, you'll be able to access information about voter rolls for your election, for your campaign. So information on who is in your district or who is in your state, get their numbers and contact information so you can actually reach out and do on the ground campaign work. In terms of ballot access, that's where the Secretary of State comes in and the election office. Every state has an election office and the Secretary of State, and usually in some combination they run elections. So uh, that's how you'll be able to get on the ballot officially. And then cybersecurity tips. So you can have what we recommend: create a dedicated phone number and a dedicated email so you can run your campaign. And then you want to back that up with two-factor authentication so you can't easily get hacked. And there's two good apps for that: Google Authenticator and Authy. Basically, it gives you a unique code each time you are trying to log in so that you can't easily be just compromised. On the donation side and campaign finance, um, you need a candidate committee, which is usually a political party. It can include, the Freedmen Party, or it can include um, whatever party you're running under, or even a smaller group if you have like a dedicated team that you're working with. You'll also need to appoint a treasurer. You'll need to collect, track, and spend donations. And there's specific rules on post-election spending. So, obviously you can't go out and like, uh, buy a Lambo or anything ridiculous like that. But you can use your money to, for example, start your next campaign if you're going to run another campaign in the future. Um, you can use it to pay off any debts that your campaign might have accrued over the period that you were running. Next is the policy side of things, our Freedmen agenda. And again, I'm not going to go through all the videos, um, but in terms of our policy and our Freedmen agenda, there's three important items that every Freedmen candidate should have on their agenda. And we also have um, on our website a policy pledge for candidates to take, um, to pledge that they're going to do something about the three policies. So the three policies are reparations now, freedmen reconstruction, and genocide prevention. So, in terms of reparations now, obviously, our promised land of 40 acres and a mule, which is referenced both in Special Field Order 15 as well as the Freedmen's Bureau Act. Then you have the United Nations definition of reparations, which includes restitution, uh, and restitution involves return of property, return to one's homeland, which in our case represents the South and our initial 40 acres and a mule, where that was at. Compensation includes things like loss of potential earnings and loss of earnings, moral damage, damage of property. Um, it also includes cost of legal and social services as well. And then in terms of the lineage economic gaps, there's a 2x gap in terms of income, there's a 10x gap in terms of wealth, and then in terms of what we calculated our uh, the value that our ancestors were quoted at in 1860. Um, they were valued at $4 billion. 4 million of our ancestors were valued at $4 billion, and you can add 7% interest, which represents inflation. And if you adjust for inflation and the 7% return, our 4 billion ancestors would be worth 230 trillion today. The 40 acres in a mule, worth 400 million in 1865 at 7% interest, is worth 16 trillion today. And then the Freedmen's Bank, 100K, 100,000 of our ancestors saved up $57 million in 1874, which in today's dollars at 7% interest is $1.3 trillion. Um, Interesting fact in terms of the racial wealth gap, uh, the number that Dr. Darity and Kirsten Mullen calculated for the to close the racial wealth gap, which is about uh, $16 trillion in today's dollars, is equivalent to the 40 acres and a mule. And, you know, those are two separate calculations, but the fact that they're identical says a very important fact. Um, okay, let's go to Freedmen Reconstruction. So, in terms of Freedmen Reconstruction, we define what a freedman is. Freedmen are Africans who were emancipated in the United States or the five tribes and their descendants. So, American freedmen, we got our designation in 1865. Uh, Native freedmen got theirs in 1866. There's Creek freedmen, Cherokee freedmen, Seminole freedmen, Chickasaw freedmen, and Choctaw freedmen. And an important distinction is, race, nationality, and citizenship. Race terms like African, Black, Colored, Negro, Afro. You can even add mulatto on here. They can all be used interchangeably. You have nationality, American, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole, Creek, Cherokee, and then citizenship, your status of citizenship. Are you a freedman, which means you come from people who are emancipated? Are you native, which means you come from people who are indigenous to the land? Or are you an immigrant? You come from people who uh, came to this land, traveled to this land from other countries and continents. Now, ethnicity is the sum of all of your statuses. So, example, you can call yourself an African American freedman, a Black American freedman, Negro American freedman, for example. Um, and then in terms of numbers, before I go into Reconstruction, um, 4 million of us were emancipated in the United States. 7,500 were emancipated from the five tribes. 2,500 were emancipated from the Cherokees, 2,300 from the Choctaw, about 1,500 from the Creek, about 1,000 from the Chickasaw, and about 300 from the Seminoles. And then in terms of overall growth, in terms of the 2020 census, there was 47 million people that uh, identified themselves as African American. Only 20% are immigrants, which means 80% are African American freedmen, Black American freedmen, etc. So that's 42 million. Only 5 million, about 6 million are African immigrants. And also, really quickly, if you look at this spike in terms of the use of freedmen over time, this represents Reconstruction. So that's why going back to Reconstruction 3.0 is super important. We need to resurrect the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen Schools, the Freedmen Bank, and Freedmen Hospitals. And in terms of legislation, there were two acts of legislation that established these. The Freedmen's Bureau Act established the Bureau, the Freedmen Schools, and the Freedmen Hospitals, and the Freedmen's Bank was a separate act of Congress um, that established the bank. So, two acts of Congress that established these four institutions. And similar to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Indian Education, we need our uh, Reconstruction institution, and they need to be created indefinitely so that they don't get overturned by any type of administrative changes. Now, last but not least, in terms of policy, is genocide prevention. Genocide prevention includes, oops, going back one slide, my bad. What up, A Boogie? Genocide prevention, I we put together two definitions: the United Nations definition of genocide and the U.S. definition of genocide. And the U.S. is based on the UN definition of genocide. That's why they're virtually identical. I'll just read the United States one for now. Um, Whoever, whether in time of peace or in time of war, with specific intent to destroy in whole or in substantial part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, by one, kills members of the group, two, causes serious bodily injury to members of that group, causes permanent impairment of mental faculties of members of the group through drugs, torture, or similar techniques. Three, subjects the group to conditions of life that are intended to cause the physical destruction of the group in whole or in part. Four, imposes measures intended to prevent births within the group. And five, transfers by force children of the group to another group. Now, you can summarize each point in the following way. Kills members of their group can be summarized by lynchings and massacres. Two examples of those are law enforcement killings and hate crime killings. We make up the highest percentage of the population of hate crime killings, as well as law enforcement killings. In terms of physical and mental harm, that includes mass incarceration, sentencing disparities, misdiagnosis and overprescription, as well as wrongful convictions. And we make up the highest percentage of people incarcerated. Um, in terms of sentencing per age, we get sentenced twice as long as white people. If you look at diagnosis and overprescription, we are more misprescribed and underdiagnosed than any other people. And then in terms of wrongful convictions, we make up about 60% of exonerations. Oops, sorry. So, um, in terms of subjects the group to conditions of life that are intended to cause the physical destruction of the group in whole or in part, that can be summarized by apartheid in food and water. We are the most food insecure people in the country. In terms of education, apartheid in education, schools are more segregated today than they were in the 1960s. In terms of finance, apartheid in finance, uh, we make up the lowest amount of people who get mortgages and loans, as well as in the venture capital industry and funding startups, we get 1% annually, out of like $200 billion. In terms of healthcare, we have the greatest healthcare disparities. And in employment, we have the highest unemployment rate in the country, despite between 18 between 1619 really and 1865 having virtually zero unemployment rate due to slavery, obviously. Extermination, that includes the abortion rate, um, infant mortality, maternal mortality. We have the highest maternal mortality both while giving birth and while having abortions. And then the hysterectomy rate, which is the removal of the uterus, which obviously prevents birth. And then family separation, transfers by children of by force to other groups. So that includes child welfare. We receive only 3% of child welfare. White people get 96%. In terms of child protective services, black families are 77% more likely to have their children removed from their homes, even given the same conditions of the home. And then in foster care, even though freedmen represent about 13% of the population, we make up 23% of the amount of children in foster care. So we're twice as represented in foster care than we should be. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the party. How can the party help with the campaign that you're running? What do we offer, and how can we support? So again, I'm going to skip the videos. You don't got to watch the videos right now. You can go back through on your own time. So let's get to the slides. Okay. So firstly, oops, going back one slide, my bad. Firstly, we can help with data. So um, come on. Okay. So on the data side of things, oh, come on now. My bad. hit it too many times. So on the data side of things, so in terms of Freedmen numbers, we broke down our Freedmen numbers using data from the U.S. Census as well as data from um, the Pew Research and Gallup. So basically, out of the 42 million freedmen in the country, 32 million of us are eligible voters. 22 million of us are registered voters. 20 million of us voted in 2020. And out of the 20 million that voted, 13.4 million voted Democrat, 6 million voted independent, and 600,000 are Republicans. In terms of eligible numbers, or sorry, unregistered numbers, um, there's 10 million freedmen that are unregistered and 12 million that are non-voting. And when you look at the numbers in terms of the pie chart, the amount of non-voters combined with the amount of independents could easily combine, which would be 18 million, right? 6 plus 12 million, 18 million. That would outnumber the 13.4 million Democrats and the 600,000 Republicans. So if the 12 million non-voters actually vote and the 6 million independents vote, we could accomplish anything we want and we wouldn't have to complain about two other parties. In terms of the Congressional Black Caucus, They ran a poll in 2021, and 58% of the people that responded to their poll had reparations as their number one issue. So even 58% of Democrats, because the CBC is basically nothing but Democrats. So 58% of 13.4 million is about 6 million. So you could potentially have 6 million of the Democrats come over to the independents and vote in a third party um, for our own candidates. Then, in terms of how the overall country is going, including other races, 43% of the country are independents, 27% are Democrats, 27% are Republicans. And this is tracking data from 2007 every month until now. So you can see the overall trend of the country. More and more people are becoming independents. The Republicans are dying the fastest, and the Democrats are following uh, quickly behind them. And then in terms of, we looked at the value of a vote, which we haven't really seen a calculation for, but we were able to uh, look at these numbers based on how much every election cycle, how much money is spent. If you take the total amount of money being spent per election cycle, and you divide that by the total amount of votes received, you get the value of a vote per citizen. Basically, how much money uh, these people who are running for office, how much money they're willing to spend to get your vote, to advertise to you, basically. So in 2000, it was $38 per citizen, or per voter, I should say. In 2004, it was $44 per voter. And 2008, it was $48 per voter. In 2012, it was $54 per voter. And then it dropped to $51 per voter in 2016. And then it shot back up to $91 per voter in 2020. So the overall trend in your value of a vote is increasing over time. So don't ever let someone tell you that your vote is worthless. And then when you look at the value of a vote and you compare that to our voting block, our potential voting block and our current voting blocks, if you look at 32 million eligible Freedmen voters and you multiply that by $90 per voter, that's a value of $3 billion. So our voting block, if we fully realize it and we all come together, is worth $3 billion. And the reason that's valuable, because it gives us leverage in determining who's going to be elected. To give you an example, Michael Bloomberg ran for elected office in 2020, and he spent $1 billion and he lost. So you have to understand that if we can come together and are able to say, hey, we have millions of votes, but you need to agree to our Freedmen agenda and give us reparations now, Freedmen reconstruction, and genocide prevention. In exchange for that, we can offer these amount of votes. And uh, the amount of money you're going to spend on your election, you could spend $1 billion and lose, or you could spend X amount of dollars and win, right? And so that's what we have to understand. Our vote is valuable, and these politicians understand it because they're spending money every election trying to win and trying to get your vote. Oh, also one last thing. Um, the value of the non-voters, if you multiply 12 million, which represents the amount of people that aren't voting that are freedmen, 12 million, and you multiply that by 90, you get a value of basically $1 billion. So that's $1 billion that we're burning every election cycle that we're not spending. So you would never have $3 billion and give it to someone without getting anything in exchange for it. And you would never burn $1 billion and just waste it. So we need to spend our $3 billion worth of our voting block properly by electing candidates that we want to see. And we need to stop burning billions of dollars by not voting, by exercising our political power. Now, in terms of our what the party can help in terms of endorsement, we broke it down into business, technology, and research and development. On the business side, we can help with fundraising. We're currently running a GoFundMe to raise money for the 2024 election, so we can give money to candidates that we endorse as a party. We also have the Freedmen News Network to help get your message out, to interview you, to cover stories about your campaign. We can also help running polls and getting feedback from the potential voters. We can also help with social media and ads, as well as creating videos for your campaign. And then obviously we have the boot camp to help people get up to speed for their campaign. And then every year we're hosting a national convention on Juneteenth, where we'll introduce our endorsements along with other keynote speakers like people like Dr. Darity that we had this year and Kirsten Mullen, as well as other great speakers. Um, on the technology side, we can help you build your website if you need help. Uh, we can help with robocalls and robotexts and emails to get your message out. And then on the R&D side, we can help with election prediction. So using key performance indicator analysis, we can track your current price per votes and your competitors that are running against you. We can track how much money you've raised versus your or the candidates, what percent of the vote you're likely to get, and where you're at, how much money you spent by percent and total amount, as well as votes. And then um, I'm almost finished with the test where we have like one more review to go through. I have like a few more additions to add for the exam, but if you click the test now, it'll take you to the form where you can put information so you get notified as soon as the test is live. Um, it'll definitely be done this week. Give me at least like another day or two. Almost done. Sorry for the delay. Um, but yeah, that's the candidate boot camp. I want to switch screens really quickly to show y'all this congressional data, and then we'll hop into a conversation. Um, bring up some people in the meantime really quickly. If y'all want to ask questions in a second. All right, so I went through looking at congressional data on freedmen populations in each district. I looked at this about 60 people in the Congressional Black Caucus. Give me one second. I just need to switch screens. Um, so, okay. So this is the 400 or this is just the about 60 seats in the CBC, and then I'll go to the entire um, caucus or the entire House Senate, the House 435 seats in the House. But basically, collected all this data on uh, how many Black people are in each district. There's about 60 people, like I said, in the Congressional Black Caucus. Um, and then what I looked at is what is our percentage for each seat in the Congressional Black Caucus? What's the percent of Black people in the district of the current 60 people in elected office? And then how many districts have more Black people than white people in that district? And if you look at out of all of the 60 seats, not every seat has a Black majority. So about about 19 of the 60 so seats have Black majority districts. Those are all the green highlighted ones, right? So all these districts right here have more Black people in the district, but other districts have 47% Black people, 27%. One has 6% Black people, um, 43, 13. So there's many districts. The point of me showing this is to let you know that we can get elected into districts that have less than majority Black populations, districts that have majority Black populations. There's about 22 out of the 60 so seats that have more Blacks than whites in the districts. Those are all the green ones on this row or this column. Now, When I looked at the entire 435 seats, there's 6 seats that either have a black majority district or more blacks than whites in the districts that we don't currently have congressional black caucus members in. So let me switch to that really quickly. Okay, so here's the 435 districts, right? Excuse me. Out of the 435 districts, um, so you'll see a bunch that don't, right? Like 2%, 1%, 4%, 3%. These represent the freedmen population. So there's out of the 435 districts, a lot of districts obviously don't have significant black populations. Um, but just scrolling through, I'll just give you an idea. There's 6 seats. I wrote a note. Let me pull up the note really quick so I can just reference it directly while I'm scrolling. Let's see. Okay. So the 6 districts that we have black majorities in, but we don't currently have black people in office: California District 44, Florida District 20, Michigan District 13, New York District 13, Tennessee District 9, Texas District 29. So those are 6 additional seats we could have in Congress. That's about 70 seats we could have in total in Congress, at least in the House. And then I'm breaking down the data by state as well. But if you look at the state data so far, excuse me, it's about 20 seats in the 20 seats in the states. Sorry, 20 seats in the Senate that we can have, that we don't currently have. And the reason we don't have them is because we are not voting as a vote. We're not voting as a block and voting with our own party and for our own candidates in those states. We're usually voting for Democratic shills or Republican candidates that won't do anything for us. Okay, so now that we see that data, basically, I'm going to open it up for discussion. We got CJ Willis up here. Let's invite I Love Show, Savage, Boss, and Regine. Yeah. What are y'all thoughts on either the boot camp or the congressional data in terms of like our political power and where we can actually take control? Any thoughts on that? I'll start with A Boogie, then I'll go to CJ Willis.
Where we can take control, I mean, I'm just gonna say it just starts where we get candidates, where we have the numbers.
Right.
I don't know if anybody saw today, kind of what happened with Gary Chambers Jr. So it's kind of like the Republicans have changed the laws or the bylaws to endorse different candidates, and the Democrats endorse like 3 other candidates. So until I feel like the places that we have the majority, we have to run those candidates because, I mean, the game is rigged depending on where you live. So it's either they split the vote or we just have to vote as a block and a group. So, I mean, we can take the information that we have from this space and the information that we gather and try to target those areas. But, I mean, we have to do the groundwork because people aren't really feeling the need to go out and vote, especially now. Like, if nobody's even supporting Gary Chambers Jr. in Louisiana, like, he's the only black candidate, and they changed the rules on us. So it's just a lot of things that we have to look at on each individual level. So I think the information is great, but it's also gonna cater to where you live locally. So that's all I have for the moment right now.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. It's going to depend on your state and your district for sure. And that's why we have to understand, like, there's no reason where we have the numbers we shouldn't be taken over. And there's no reason why if we vote at, I just put another tweet in the Jumbotron from tweet we made earlier. I'm about to share my screen to show it. But there's no reason we shouldn't have political power nationally in states as well as on the district level. Um, while I pull up this tweet, let me go to CJ Willis, then I'll go to show. CJ Willis, you ready?
Hey, peace and reparations. Yo, I want to say, thank you for compiling all of this. It's good to have, there's a lot of information, but it's also good to have it in one place. I saw something about Gary Chambers Jr. I didn't see when it happened, but I'm glad you explained that. So that makes me think that we need more strategizing as far as this whole political game is like a game of chess.
Yep.
We always need to be looking out for things like that for them changing rules, because you know they're gonna change the rules.
Yep.
We need to try to anticipate how they change the rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is great information. I'm glad that you put this together. I can't wait to go back through it. I was actually watching some of the other stuff that you put up earlier, like the thing with Roly Poly, Freedmen's Bank, which was also interesting. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but that was some interesting stuff in it too. But yeah, I'm loving this. I can't wait to go through it and take the test. And I'll land on that. Peace.
Thank you for that, CJ Willis. You know, it was actually funny because I had watched that before, but I cut it off at the the first time I watched it, like maybe a few months ago. I cut it off after the panel left. I didn't watch the second part. And then I was reminded going back through this time that Roly Poly was there, and I was cracking up because he acted exactly how I would have expected. The only surprising thing is he can't deny that he doesn't know what a freedman is now, right? He can't say, "Oh, what is a freedman? Oh, y'all not old nothing." When you sitting up there talking about when you're talking about the Freedmen's Bank and what was stolen, and you didn't have no problem saying freedman. So that delineation, oh man, he can't get around that. And then the second part came. I watched that this time, and the second part, the dude brought up the guy from the U.S. National Archives who gave some more background on like genealogy research in using the Freedmen Bank records and the Freedmen Bureau's records. He brought up that there were two congressional hearings on the robbery of the Freedmen's Bank. He said there was a Senate hearing and there was a House hearing on that, and I didn't actually know that. And so we're going to hold a space later this week, maybe tomorrow even, where we're going to read through the transcript of the hearings, because Frederick Douglass was a witness at one of them. And so I was like, "Whoa, what? They had hearings on this? Like, how do we never hear about this?" So I definitely want to go back through and bring to the people like the hearings so people can see what conversation was, because we know we're owed the 1.3 trillion from that. You know what I mean? So it'll be good to just see what they were talking about back then. With that, I'll pass the show. What up, show?
What's up, peace, family? I don't know what was going on with this guy Gary. I thought he was like running on a Democratic policy about smoking weed and legalizing weed or something like that. Did they end up kicking him off the ballot or something?
That's a good question. We should check where he's at right now. I know he definitely he went viral with that weed ad, and then he went viral for, I think, what did he burn, like a Confederate flag? And after that, he kind of like, I saw him kind of like dip off the radar in terms of like his publicity. Um, I think the Democrats are kind of distancing themselves from him. Um, but yeah, he's a Democratic candidate, so I'm not sure. And he hasn't spoken on reparations really, which is kind of disappointing because if you're going to do an ad, that's one thing to do an ad on is reparations, you know?
Right. Well, my question was that maybe I don't know how because this is really good information that actually this room should be absolutely filled with.
Right.
We should have at least 500 people in this room learning about the ways that we can get the dial to move as far as politically to get our reparations. But with that being said, it's the best move to do voter registration policies or trying to come up with some type of commercials for various different advertisement. I mean, because we got so many brothers and sisters on the Democratic Kool-Aid. I'm just sitting there trying to brainstorm how do we get our brothers and sisters off this Democratic Kool-Aid, and so we can try to vote together to get policies and resources for our people.
Yes. Yeah, that's great points. I want to bring up two references for that. The first is the tweet I have in the Jumbotron. I'm trying to share my screen, but StreamYard sometimes be like lagging because I'm doing a lot on the screen. But just if you go to the tweet in the Jumbotron about the voting rate dropped since 2012 for Black population, it tracks our voter turnout from 1980 till 2016, right? And you can see a jump from 2008 to 2012, where we had the highest voter turnout of any race. Any race, we had the highest voter turnout. And what the fuck happened? We got Barack Obama elected, and we were finessed. Let's be honest. I know our feelings are hurt, finessed. He's not a freedman. He didn't give us reparations. We all thought he would. He didn't do it the first time. The second time, we voted for him again, thinking he would do it the next time. Didn't do it either time. And that also represents our drop in voter turnout in 2016. We were pissed off. All these people came out. They said, yeah, all you got to do is vote and all these things will change. Well, we voted and things didn't happen the way we wanted. And so instead of realizing that our political power was the thing that got Obama elected and realizing that we need to get our own candidates elected, not candidates that were selected for us, right? If we realize that and what we did during Reconstruction when we had the highest turnout ever, 80%, and if you look at our numbers now, they're between 60 and 70%. So if we're at, let's see, it's about 70, I'll say 65 to 69%. That was the historic during 2008, 2012. So if we can vote at those levels or even Reconstruction levels at 80%, we can get senators elected, governors, districts, House representatives, and the president. So there's no reason we can't control our political system. We just, we had this moment of greatness in 2008 and 2012 where we finally did turn out to vote. And then because we didn't get what we wanted, we kind of became politically apathetic and said, well, we don't need to vote anymore. Now, in terms of answer your question more directly, what do we need to do? Firstly, we need to advertise to voters in these districts where we have Black majorities and where our freedmen populations reside. We need to get people registered. There's 12 million of us that are unregistered. So if there's 12 million of us that are unregistered, or sorry, 10 million of us that are unregistered, 12 million of us that are non-voting. So we need to get the 10 million of us that are unregistered registered so that their votes can count in the political process, right? Turn that $1 billion that's getting burnt in a voter value into actual leverage in getting our own candidates elected. And then the non-voters, the 2 million people who there's 2 million that are registered but don't vote. So we need to get those 2 million to come out to vote as well. So if and like I broke down the numbers with the whole like comparing the unregistered or the non-voting in total with the independents, that's 18 million. 18 million is greater than the 13.4 million Democrats and the 600,000 Republicans. If you add 13.4 million to 600,000, that's 14 million. So 4 million greater would be independent voters if we can wake up the non-voters and get the independents to know that there's 6 million of them that exist, and we focus on our own candidates, which comes back to the boot camp. We also need to run our own candidates. We can't just have like a bunch of voter turnout and then we don't have anybody to vote for. So that's kind of like where we're in the chicken and the egg, right? We got to make sure we have voters that turn out, and we got to have candidates that are willing to run. And if we combine both of those, there's no political reason we shouldn't win by strategic numbers. No reason. So advertise in those congressional districts, advertise in those states in terms of getting voters registered, and then we need to get candidates in these districts and in these states to run for office, and then obviously as well as on the local level for city and city council and mayor, for example, as well. I hope that answers your question, bro.
Yeah, you kind of, somewhat kind of answered my question. But I'm not gonna harp on that on the side note.
Yeah. If I missed anything, add to it.
Yeah, my vote really wasn't. I ended up voting for Obama, but I really was voting for Michelle because I'm from Chicago. You know what I'm saying? I grew up.
And she's a Freedman too.
And she's a freak. And her family, they weren't really well to do. They was kind of hard working, folks. So that's where my disappointment really lies.
Yeah.
In Michelle.
Yeah.
Because Michelle chose the bad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Barack would have did what Michelle.
Exactly. If she would have told him to do reparations, he would have done reparations.
He would have did reparations, but instead she started dancing, talking about getting in shape, and then did the LGBTQ. I forgot all the rest of the letters, but he really started pushing that, which I ain't got no problem with. You having a different lifestyle, a quit life. I ain't got no problem with that. But with us hurting as much as we are financially, getting less contracts, getting less employment, through municipalities, things of that nature, from all the travesties that's done, to Black Americans. I was reading the other day, a brother that was a Black Panther died in jail.
Yep.
Barack could have freed that dude.
Facts.
He could have died at home with his family.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? He was an old guy. What he was gonna do?
Right.
I think he was 73.
Yep.
Barack been out of office 6 years now. He could have freed that brother. So he was an epic failure. But I'm more so disappointed, in Michelle. I'm just sitting there, listening to you, brother. You giving out great information, and I'm real disgruntled on the voting process. To be honest, Marcel motivated me. I've never gave it to somebody that was running for office before.
Yep.
Never.
Yep.
But after listening to Marcel, I started sending him my little bread.
Thank you.
Every time I came across a little bread, I started sending him a little bread because I want the brother to do well, because I felt like I was invested in some type of return. And I think that's the message we need to be kind of getting out, as far as, developing a whole new party and trying to get candidates out there. We've invested in a Democratic Party for 50 years. Before that, the Republican Party.
Right.
And, all that did was get us, the best thing we got was civil rights, and it really wasn't for us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
White women got civil rights.
Yep.
Now the Mexicans and, the queer community, siphon off of it. You know what I'm saying? So the little bit of progress we did get, we didn't really make any necessary strides, and it's time for us to do what you're saying, bro. But I don't know how we get that done with, with the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a negative connotation with voting and politics.
It's that voter apathy after Obama. Everybody basically became, like disbelievers. They were like, we got tricked. And I agree with you in the sense that I wasn't re-inspired to get into politics until Marcel either. It took Marcel, Tamara, Somerville, Camilla Moore, seeing the work that people were actually doing in reparations and not giving up. If I finally felt like, okay, if we're not giving up, then we need to put everything we have into this. And like you said, we voted for the Democrats for 75 years, the Republicans for 75 years, 150 years of voting for the two-party system. Let's give our own party a chance, our own candidates a chance. And it's not like we haven't done it before. We had the Freedom Democratic Party with Fannie Lou Hamer. That existed for 4 years. They were crushed by the Democrats because they were trying to get seated as delegates in the National Convention. And because they were too loyal to the Democrats didn't care. They're like, screw you, we're not giving you power. So you can't do it within a party. You have to create your own. And then you had the Black Panther Party, who it lasted 4 times longer for 16 years. The only problem with that is COINTELPRO took 80% of their actions against them, which ultimately killed it. Now, let me just say one thing. It's not that we shouldn't have our own party because the Freedom Democratic Party and the Black Panthers got destroyed. That's the exact reason why we need our own party. They were not allowed to exist because of their political power. Whereas we've had the NAACP, the fucking Urban League, and all these million black organizations that like have existed since the damn near civil rights and Reconstruction, but they haven't done what we've needed to do because they don't have political power. Let me go to D, then I'll go to Inspired.
What's going on, everybody? So the biggest thing that we need to do is we got to hold our elected politicians accountable. My man earlier, he was talking about how white women, sorry, I like to get a call, how white women benefited a lot from that civil rights thing, and it's very true. It's our politicians just let that happen. Like we vote for these people. What's going on? We vote for these people, and they sit back and they do like little trick bag, and they have minority, people of color, disenfranchised community population, and they try to put these into these laws. So we have to stay on top of our elected politicians and just make sure that they're following through with their promises. You know, but I mean, I'm voting independent. I'm definitely not voting Democratic or the GOP.
Exactly. We need to vote independent, and we need to run our own candidates and vote for them. We need to support people like Marcel, support people like Tamara and Somerville and Camilla Moore. And there's many more. We had 2,000 elected officials during Reconstruction. That's post-emancipation. If they can have 2,000 elected officials post-emancipation, we can have it today. Let me go to I Love Clarity, and then we'll go to Show.
Well, greetings, everyone. I just wanted to kind of add that strategically, putting out the propaganda related to Obama's run for office, us getting behind him, but he made no promises. There was no policies for freedmen people, for Black people, not one piece of policy specifically for us. And I know Show mentioned why I voted because of Michelle, because she was from Chicago. And I think this so much, I only voted because everybody was saying he's a Black man, because I really didn't understand the conceptualization of people that are immigrants that can be Black and don't have the same interests as freedmen people. But I think that was a great lesson, and I think we need to take that just as much as a lesson. Because it did I didn't even vote the second term because I saw we got no tangibles after that. And it was kind of like speaking to anybody against Obama was kind of like, you ain't Black if you don't vote for me type of thing. So, but I do think when we're speaking to other people that are kind of like, like with what you placed in the, our vote matters, and we voted at a higher level. I think strategically, because we have to remember, white supremacy, they think 10 to 15 years ahead. If they wanted to disenfranchise, disencourage us, they did so by allowing him to run on that platform and to do exactly what he did. That was a strategic move. We have to stop thinking that this ain't warfare.
Mm-hmm.
That was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk to people, we say, we know white supremacy and we know how it works, and we have to rally back around our own political party and our own politician that we pick. We're not allowing them to pick it. So I think if we go out, and I'm glad just that I'm re-energized, by seeing Marcel and other politicians that are going to come out, we can do it. We just have to say, like, we're not going to allow this to happen again. But I land there.
100%. And this goes back to something I believe in terms of, like, basically from 2008 to now. We had two big finesses. The first finesse was Obama. Second finesse was Black Lives Matter, right? Like, those were the two biggest finesses. And, like, Obama represented our being finessed by someone who's not freedman, right? Like, where we thought someone was freedman because they were black, and we didn't even realize, damn, this person's not even freedman. And that's why they don't give a fuck about us, right? And then secondly, you could even include Kamala Harris in this because she got elected, right, as VP. So we got the president and vice presidents as two black people that are not freedmen that are stealing our credit, right?
Yes.
And then the Black Lives Matter is kind of like the finesse in terms of our political frustration. Like, the Black Lives Matter, when we said Black Lives Matter, we meant Freedmen Lives Matter, right?
Yes.
And that got finessed. And then you also had the organization that grew out of the hashtag that then created this, like, it subsumed our political momentum and it got all the political attention and media attention, but they didn't do anything for us. They stole millions of dollars, billions of dollars, bought mansions, and we're still in the same fucking place that we were. So, like, just scrap all of that. We made mistakes, but we can't make those mistakes again. And I feel like those mistakes are basically like the last mistakes I feel like we're gonna make, because I feel like we learned those in the modern age. Like, we got tricked by the politicians that look black, and we got tricked by organizations that acted black. And so it's like, nope, we need our own organizations that we build from the grassroots, and we need our own candidates that we raise from the grassroots. And those in combination can get around these trick bags, because we're not going to let the Republicans and Democrats serve us with their pre-selected, vetted candidates with no freedmen agenda, no freedmen policy backing it, right? We're going to introduce and say, here's our freedmen agenda. You either pledge it or don't, and that determines our support. And here's the legislation that goes with it. Here's HR 1865 for reparations now. Here's the legislations on the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Bureau Act. Here's the legislation on genocide and how it currently exists and how we need to change it. So I definitely think that now that we have those hard lessons, and it is a hard pill to swallow. Like, I'm not proud of those mistakes, but it's something where I think we should take all of that and direct that energy into a positive outlet rather than just self-defeatism and self-sabotage. Let's go to Show and then D.
No, bro, I appreciate that. I was kind of, responding to the sister. I was real disappointed in, Obama as well, and how damaging Obama was, man. I was talking to some youngins when Obama was in office, and they was trying to tell me how racism didn't exist no more.
Right.
Because we had a black-looking, well, they didn't say black-looking, but we had a black-looking president. We had black kids running around, foundational black Americans running around, thinking ain't no more racism. White people is cool with us now. Because Obama was president. That was so damaging. When the sister said, you know what, they actually planned this, man, that was so damaging.
Right.
But, us in Chicago kind of was skeptical of Obama because we knew his ties. We knew I don't want to say these group of people because they air spaces once you say these group of people, but it's a specific religion group of people that's big in Chicago. They got a section of Chicago called Hyde Park area where they pretty much, own everything, and that's one of their major little areas. He was supported by them people. And when you know what I'm saying, he went to Trinity, but his circle was the people in the Hyde Park area. Mm-hmm. So we was watching kind of his circle, even though we was cool with Reverend Wright and we was cool with, Trinity. His circle of who he moved around with, politics-wise, things of that nature, who he was getting money from. Right. We was kind of side-eyeing. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I voted again, because of Michelle. Yeah. But with that, I pretty much land. I'm gonna sit back and listen to the rest of the bill. Yeah, definitely appreciate that show. Go for it, D.
So there's a policy dating back to the 1960s. It's called benign neglect. Mm-hmm. Well, basically, black people are mad because we keep on promising them things and we're not giving it to them. Mm-hmm. So the government said, you know what? Well, let's just go ahead and just ignore them. Let's just not even bring up black people. Mm-hmm. So they use little trick bags, minority, person of color, whatever, right? All bullshit terms. Mm-hmm. We sat back and we thought Obama was going to do something for us simply because he was black, because he listened to Lil Wayne, because he liked hip hop, he liked playing basketball, all these things. We gotta sit back and be more serious about our politics. Mm-hmm. Just like the previous person said, he was definitely taken care of by those Hyde Park group, by that group that lives over there. So from now on, we just cannot let this type of stuff happen. We have to stay on code. Any politician, no matter what, local, state, federal, we have to be on their neck, and we have to make them give us promises that they're going to actually follow through. We cannot never again look. Joe Biden got 94% of black women voted for Joe Biden. 85% of black men voted for Joe Biden. We cannot let that happen ever again. You see, this dude, he can't even get our sister up out of Russia. That's a whole nother topic because her sexual preference group, they're not even trying to show up and defend her. But that's a whole nother topic. But we have to give actual real promises, and we have to follow through. So we can go back and forth.
Hey, D, I got a question.
This culture.
I got a question for you, D, and kind of for show too, and even a little bit for Inspired since you brought this up. But how long do you think it would have taken us to kind of figure out the Freedmen knowledge, like at the level we at now, had we not been like betrayed like that? Because I think to some level it forced us to go back to the drawing board. You know what I mean? We probably I don't know. We probably would have been too kumbaya. You know what I mean? We
could have. The problem is that we had so many damn atrocities happen to us left and right. Right. We had so many times that our people were, sabotaged. Yep. Left and right. And it's sickening if you just go back in history. If you just look at between the year 1880 and then 1920, if you just look for 40 years and look at the atrocities that happened. Yep. Tulsa, Wilmington,
Rosewood,
where they just marched in and just took over stuff.
Mm-hmm. Wilmington.
The actual reason, Wilmington, North Carolina. You know what? We have squatter rights. Mm-hmm. It's because the Klan was running off black people that owned land, that owned ranches, that owned houses and stuff. They would literally run them off. Yep. And they said, you know what? If they don't come back, and if you go ahead and sign, there's a form down here up in Texas, there's a $30 form. Yeah. If you sign this $30 form and the people that bought the house do not claim it within 2-3 years, the house is now yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a story about 10 years ago where this brother moved.
Yeah, that was that black dude, right? Yep, I heard about that.
Out of Dallas. This brother moved into this gated community. He said, "Hold on, don't nobody live there."
He flipped the script on him.
He flipped the script, and then what happened? You have to go ahead and pay. I think it's all these Karens. I think it's unfair. How dare you feel that? But I'm just saying, like, my man just flipped. He just flipped the script.
Yep.
Yeah, he said, "Look, we're gonna go ahead and get it. Go ahead and get this."
He got his reparations.
Yeah, he got his little reparations. I ain't mad at him.
Nah, me neither. Get your thing.
Yeah, and this country has like a history of that. That's why they don't want to give. That's why now they're trying to get rid of squatter rights.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get rid of it now, but I mean it's been on law. I mean on like law books for over 100 years. It's kind of tough,
Definitely.
So,
also, you mentioned benign neglect. One of the terms we've been using a lot lately is genocide, and the reason we use genocide, in addition to like benign neglect and racism, but genocide is like a higher degree in the sense that other communities are now talking about, oh, I experienced racism or anti-Asian this, anti this hate, right? Anti this racism, or benign neglect in this sense. No one else can claim genocide. Genocide has specific definitions by the United Nations and the United States. And if you go through every definition, which we have, every definition applies to us. And you only need to apply, only one needs to apply to you to be considered having experienced genocide. And we're experiencing genocide by current standards. So family separation, extermination in terms of preventing births.
Yeah, just look at the mass incarceration.
Yep, exactly. Mass incarceration.
There's a movie. Let me tell you something. Like there's this movie. It's called The Big Short. It's basically talking about the 2008 financial crisis, right? So Michael Blur, the guy that Christian Bale played, the guy that basically found out like the real weird dude, the like socially awkward weird dude that Christian Bale played.
Right.
Well, his real life counterpart, he said, "Look, I'm going to start investing up in water." Right. So he's been investing up in water, and then he said, "Look, I'm gonna go pull my money up out of the stock market, but I'm gonna invest in them in like the only lucrative thing, right?" And this man said, like, the only lucrative thing that'll guarantee me money is private prison. So he's got money invested in that,
right?
And that's sad,
right?
But I mean, that's the mentality that these people have.
Exactly.
These people are trying to really. I'm telling you, there's going to be another crime bill. There's going to be another crime bill. That's why I believe. Well, I mean, now I'm getting into conspiratorial thought, but that's why I believe a lot of like all this like weird random crimes going on now. They're trying to get that. They're trying to really ramp that back up. But
yeah, I mean, all these hate crimes. Yeah, all these hate crimes that are happening, we need to get those under control. The Republicans shot down a bill that would kind of like look at the law enforcement for white supremacists. They shot that down. So they definitely don't want the ties, coming after them.
The fact that they don't want to take it serious because the simple fact is, this. Every time that there's a payout to a family, right?
Right.
It comes out of the city budget.
Yep.
So they have no problem beating down on people doing this, doing that, right?
Right.
The thing that they need to do is get rid of qualified immunity.
Yep.
And make it come out of the police engine.
Exactly.
We do that, things will get a lot better.
I 100% agree with that. You have to attack the money. They can't be safe in being able to keep getting paid as well as securing their jobs. They have to have the full book thrown at them, and that's why a lot of these agencies are being infiltrated by these supremacists.
There was a document back in the late 80s, early 90s talking about how white supremacist groups have invaded law enforcement.
Yep.
And this was 30 years ago. So I mean, it didn't change. It got
Exactly.
worse.
And here's the funny flip from the 1960s, J. Edgar Hoover until today. J. Edgar Hoover said that the Black Panthers were the greatest internal threat to the security of the United States, and now the director of the FBI was reporting to Congress that white domestic terrorists and white supremacy was the greatest internal threat uh, to our security. Right. So the flip in all that time, but in terms of enforcement, the DOJ we were looking at um, when the Buffalo massacre happened in New York, um, the DOJ put out a statement that said the original purpose of the Department of Justice was to stop white supremacist violence against African Americans. Yet, if that's your founding statement, what have you been doing for 150 years? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's a bunch of baloney. Like they haven't followed through on anything. They're putting out all these like statements, but this goes back to political power because who puts the attorney general into office? They're not elected. You know what I mean? Same with the director of the FBI. Like I learned there was a stipulation on how often the directors of these get elected because I was wondering how the fuck did J. Edgar Hoover stay in office so long because he was in there for presidential for four presidents. 4 times 4. You know what I mean? That's 16 years. So I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then when I looked it up, there's no stipulations on it. They just get elected by the president, basically. They get chosen. So it's like these people are getting put into power by elected people who don't care anything about our communities, and they continue perpetuating this genocide against us. Um, I'm gonna start winding it down, but I do want to get last thoughts before we do that. Give everyone a chance for any last thoughts. We've been here for an hour, like 15 minutes now. If anybody didn't get to watch the beginning, go back through the video. You can check out the full campaign, and you can go to the boot camp yourself to just go through, click the other videos and stuff like that. But basically, I want to give everyone last thoughts. I'll start with you again, D. Then we'll do CJ Willis, Clarity, and then A Boogie.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. This is my first time really up on these Twitter Spaces. Essentially, we just got to sit back and just not let this okie doke happen.
Right.
I think Black people, I think that we are very, what's the word I want to say, aware of things now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that it'll be an issue with, 94% of Black women and 85% of Black men voted for these two trash parties. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're in a very good position, a very good place, and I just want to see us just keep on growing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We're waking up and people are definitely leaving in droves. I think this upcoming midterms will be a good metric in seeing how much the tables are turning, but I feel them turning in terms of the momentum in the community. Let me get King Introvert up here real quick before I go to CJ Willis since he hasn't got a chance to speak yet. CJ Willis, I know you've been in here. King Introvert, I seen you in here. Any last thoughts?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, bro.
Okay, what's going on, peoples? Really, we need candidates to focus, it's the money thing when it comes to this white supremacy and wealth.
Mm-hmm.
As I've seen articles coming in last year, it's costing the entire country $16 trillion being discriminating Black Americans.
Right.
So it's costing the entire money, the entire country, trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions, just discriminating us. Just think about that. Trillions, 16 trillion. That's crazy, right? But the fact that these companies are willing to die on the hill, the fact y'all going to literally destroy your entire nation because you don't want to share wealth with Black people, really? And for real, and it's costing 50 billion of the country because the companies don't want to hire black men, and we have to be very aggressive of have these candidates develop policies for black men to enter the force, not jobs, because jobs are going to get moved out. I mean, they're moving those jobs across the sea, and we have to definitely give black Americans business, home ownership, and be investors, because all that is transferable. I mean, that's generational wealth that can be transferable, and also champion nuclear black families. And I'll rest my plane right there. Y'all be good.
Hey, thank you for that, King Arturo. I definitely agree. We need strong families, and we need to make sure that we get into business and invest. And the best way we can do that is when we have our reparations, but still do what you can in the meantime towards that, building up that financial base. But reparations is really the key, so we can do that long term. Like we saved up, like I mentioned, that $57 million, our 100K Freedmen ancestors saved up. That's worth $1.3 trillion today. And to give you an idea of scale, most banks, all the black banks collectively have only about $1 billion today, all combined. So compare a trillion to $1 billion, and you realize the problem. And then if you look at the amount of money that venture capitalists invest every year, it's about $200 billion in the U.S., $300 billion globally. And if we had that 1.3 trillion, because they only give us 1% annually, if we had that 1.3 trillion, that would be enough to fund our own 200 billion every year for multiple years and still have billions left over, right? So we definitely need to get back to this, but we can only do it with this full reparations now, Freedmen reconstruction, and that genocide prevention. Let's go to CJ Willis, then I Love Clarity, and A Boogie.
Hey, yo, I just want to say, man, this is a great space, man. I'm always learning something in here. It was a lot of information. I want to go back through it. I'm always learning something in here, but I did not know about that being the impetus for squatters' rights. That is crazy. I never knew that. But yeah, this is a great space. I can't wait to go back through it, and I'm going to go through. Can't wait to take the boot camp test and land on that. Peace of reparations.
Thank you, CJ, man. I'm gonna have to make this test super hard for you, CJ. You too excited about this test? Nah, but I love it. One thing that's kind of fun for me because, like, dang, in school you kind of don't like tests as much, but this is kind of like a reason where it kind of is helpful. It's helpful for people who go through it and the party. It's helpful if you go through it because you'll see where your knowledge is, and even if you miss questions, we'll know which questions you miss and which concepts you need strengthening on, and then we can go through and strengthen those concepts. So there's no loss here. It's all about getting better and strengthening it. You don't get an F here. You don't get kicked out of class. You don't get suspended. You know what I mean? It's like, how can we make you a better candidate? So there's no fear. Don't have no fear about nothing crazy like that. We're not gonna put your grades on Twitter. So it's all good. I Love Clarity. It's on you, and then we'll go to our other co-host, Boogie.
Oh, I wanted to I know this is like a point we've already went, but when BLM used that premise to raise however much money they were raising, and then to now caught up in some federal and state investigation, they were backed by Soros. And look up if you don't know who that is. But it's important that we know who was backing these political organizations. But the intent is, and always, is to disenfranchise us with coming together with our monies and putting back. Because all it does is makes us suspicious of the next person that comes and tries to garner our finances and garner our political attention for the right reasons. So we have to know that all of that is strategic in nature. And I know CJ mentioned, why are there not more people in these spaces? Because the information is here, the building is here, and I'm going to tell you, it's the same reasons and the attraction. We have to stay steadfast and know that the good game is not the short game.
Right.
The real game is not going to be this. This is we have a long political game, and thanks for everybody keep spreading the word, and know that find out who's politically backing the movement before you put your money with it. But that's how I land there.
Yeah, and you reminded me of something really quickly before I go to A Boogie. I watched the old interview with it was Ice Cube. He was talking about his plan for Black America, and they had Alicia Garza, like come out of nowhere and try to like disrupt his like whole thing because he was fighting for like Freedmen. You know, he was using the term ADOS at the time, but you know he was fighting for Freedmen and trying to get us our own thing. And it was really interesting hearing her because she was totally against him. You know what I mean? She was like, "Well, I'm doing it already," and da 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 da. She was like, right, and then you know at the end she tried to be all diplomatic at the end, like, "Well, all I think is we should just come together. You know, Ice Cube, I've been looking for you. I've been trying to get in touch with you. Like, basically, like, help BLM pop even more and not help, like, our people. Because at the time, that would have been the crossroads to make BLM lineage specific. But instead, she kind of wanted to, like, hijack the Black agenda that Ice Cube was talking about and trying to come up with, which was a contract for Black America, which had an ADOS agenda, but that ADOS agenda was in the direction of Freedmen. You know what I mean? Because that's where that message was heading towards. But anyways, like that, it ended up breaking up. You know, we've never really seen anything with Ice Cube and the contract and BLM since or anything like that. But it just it just showed me that her heart wasn't really in the right place. It was more about her and about BLM and about what she was doing. It was like very selfish and egotistical. It wasn't very like collaborative, and she wasn't listening even to the lineage specific stuff. You know, it kind of just wafted over her head, and she was just like moving on with it.
But you know, you make a great point. Hey, Boogie, I love you. You make a great point. That was strategic. Remember, strategic white supremacy. I think Roland.
Yeah, Roland. Roly Poly.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a setup, right?
Yeah, it was a setup. She jumped him. He was like, "And now I have."
I think had Cube entertained the situation, he would be caught up in this federal investigation as well. Strategic in nature. That's why I love the Freedmen Party. That's why I'm sticking. You know, that's why I say you have to go where the work is being done. I'm talking about the real work. There ain't the policy on the page is what the policy is on the page. It speaks to me and grassroots. I'm gone. Thanks, A Boogie.
Hey Boogie over is still my cut. No, it's good, but love you, Hey Boogie. But let's I agree. Like one of the things we did is I put exactly what's on the policy page that we give our candidates on the website. I just made it a little more pretty, but I had the presentation up there because I was like, all right, this shit is fire, but I need to make it look a little better. So it took me like about a week, and I made it all presentable. But now it's everything that we need, and there's no reason any candidate can't go through it and get the political education they need. There's no reason that even a voter can't go there and get the political education they need. And then if a candidate wants to go through the boot camp, they can get even more political education. So definitely. But yeah, that shit was crazy. She totally jumped Ice Cube, and she was with the bullshit. She wasn't like, "Oh hey, Ice Cube." She was like, "All right, I'm ready to jump you."
At that time, she was on the show. She had bought several homes.
Yeah, her ego, you could tell her ego was on fire. It was all about her. It was all about, like, she was just trying to take credit for everything. It was very, very selfish. You could see it. But yeah, hey Boogie, let me give you the last words, and then we'll wind down.
Yeah, I don't really got too much to add. Thank you, Chairman, for the space. Thank you, thank you for co-hosting. Thank you for all the speakers and all the listeners who were listening in at this point. We're going to ask that you retweet the space, please, if you can, before we leave the space. Can you just retweet the space? And also, you can please check out our webpage, and you can join the organization. You can check out our webpage at freedmen.party. Once again, that's Freedmen.party. And you can go around, check out some of our initiatives and some of our political action incentive things that we're doing. So that's all I got for tonight, Chairman. Thank you for the space.
Thank you for that, A Boogie. I just want to give another shout out to all of our amazing listeners for y'all patience and y'all focus. You know, we ain't got 500,000 people in here yet, you know what I mean? But give us some time, give us some time. You know, people are going to find their way to the truth, and you just got to stay focused. You know, it's easy to give up. It's easy to be like, man, I ain't got enough people. I'm going to just go to sleep. You know what I mean? Nah, we got to keep putting in the work, and it's all recorded so they can go back and check the receipts. You know what I mean? And yeah, we gotta just keep staying focused and set an example, right? If we set an example and show people, hey, I know there's all these other spaces going on about 20 million topics, but the one that's going to affect your life is the one where you have the political power to change it. So yeah, we just gotta stay focused. We're gonna keep plugging. I'm gonna keep trying to do these candidate boot camps at least once a week, just to go back through for any new people that might have missed it and want to catch it. Um, but we're gonna keep doing this, and the candidate bootcamp is gonna be here until 2024. And if there's ways we can make it better, if we learn something, we're gonna make it better. But we want something where people can have a way to get up to speed. I know we got Harriet and Insane, so let's go to Insane, then we'll get Harriet.
Hey, Freedmen Party.
What up,
hey,
bro?
Boogie. I love Clarity. Thanks for hosting the space. Hello to everybody in the
What
space.
up?
Can't have enough boot camps from the Freedmen's Party. Definitely a step in the right direction. Definitely marching in the right direction. My question is largely about related to. I know the emphasis is on federal, but as it relates to a local program and a Freedman candidate, say hypothetically a Freedman is the mayor in, say for instance, the town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, or Durham, North Carolina. I'm looking at the mayor's special projects in Durham, and they're doing the mayors for guaranteed income that many mayors around the country are involved in. They're going to give out some guaranteed income payments, no string attached. They're about to launch their pilot program. So that's something that the mayor in Durham is doing. When I go over to Chapel Hill, I see she's got Mayor's Youth for a Sustainable Future, and she's got some kind of community tree committee. Those are her pet things that she wants to push. And she also has an internship program. So I'm wondering, hypothetically, if a Freedman candidate succeeds and becomes the mayor in any given small town, is there room for him to have, he or he, to have some type of program, some type of voter education program targeting voters to train them or teach them about policy and things like that? Is that a hypothetical that could actually exist?
Definitely, that's definitely possible, because part of your responsibility as a mayor is to maintain politically active community and constituency. So you could use public funding, to make registration easier, so people can get automatically registered. That's something that can happen on the city level. Um, and you could help in terms of making sure that people have all the information, because think about the frequency that we get political information. It's usually only during election time. Why don't you have political education any other time, right? So that's something that could be done on the city level. In fact, you mentioned the mayors for UBI type of thing. I know who Michael Tubbs is, and he's a black guy. And my big feedback to him was, UBI is good, but UBI is for everybody. You know what I mean? You should be focused on reparations. There's no reason there can't be a reparation. Like, I know there's the reparations for mayor thing, but in terms of putting together policy that, because what a lot of these UBI pilots are doing is they're taking some amount of the taxpayer money and they're choosing a small fraction of the population already to give out the UBI to. So why don't you just do a similar thing for reparations that already has that smaller population that's targeted and directed? So it's not like these have to be either or. You could do both and, right? But the focus on the local level with reparations as well as the voting side is definitely something I would fight for.
Exactly, because people need to know what policy is going to benefit them versus what people are saying at the federal level in terms of voting for someone simply because they are more likable than the other person.
Right.
I envision a Freedmen candidate saying, here, this is the policy. This is going to benefit a certain group of people. This policy over here will benefit this group of people.
Facts. Exactly, and that's why we have our Freedmen agenda. And like I mentioned, so actually, if some of you have been following us, these boot camps for the past few times we've done them, and we've kept our promises, right? I promised that we would break down the congressional data, right? Next, we're going to break down a little bit more state data. State data is somewhat actually easier to break down than the congressional data. But what I want to cross-reference the state data with is governor results and senator results. So that's where I got to filter it a little more. But once we have that, we'll have the congressional data, the state data, and then I was having conversations with people like Black Majority, and we were talking about there's actually state districts. So if you're going for state legislators, congressional districts and state districts are not the same. Does that make sense? Like there's like, for example, Camilla Moore was running for state senate, right? State senate is not. She was running for California Senate, not the U.S. Senate, right? And each place. So there's 435 congressional districts, but every state also has its state districts that determine who's going to be state legislators. So that's another map we're going to have to break down. So we're going to, ideally by the end of this month, we'll have the state data next, and then we'll have the Senate data next about the state Senate data. So breaking down state Senate districts, which are even, like I said, I initially thought that there's some obviously overlap between congressional districts and state Senate districts, but they're not all 100% overlap. So we want to get all of that data. But yeah, other than that, let's go to Harriet, and then we'll start closing down.
Peace for our reparations family. I just want to say I appreciate y'all, dispersing this information and starting the Freedmen Party. I think people are going to slowly catch on and see how powerful, y'all's platform is. And it's. I feel like it's already happening. And yeah, I just want to say I appreciate y'all. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Harriet. I really appreciate your continued support and you helping promote, the work that we're doing. I love what the work you're doing and pushing. We go back to Save Mason days. That was when we really popped. I remember when you first came in our space and let us know about it, and we was on it. You know what I mean? It was like, oh wait, slow down, what's happening? Ford is taking over. What? But we caught up to speed and we did something. So that just speaks to the speed at which we can do things when we're all on code moving in one direction. And like Insane was saying, we marching in the right direction. So we just got to keep marching and keep pushing. With that, we'll start closing out. Thank you again to all of our speakers. Thanks for the listeners with your patience. We've been here for an hour and a half now. Thank you, CJ Willis Show, Insane, Harriet, I Love Clarity, A Boogie, and as well as Savage, Boss Hog, and Wildbeeg. But yeah, y'all have a great rest of y'all day. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. And tomorrow, I'm going to try to, I got to find it because it got a paywall, but I'm going to try to find the Senate hearings for the Freedmen's Bank failure. There was a Senate hearing and a House hearing on the Senate, on the Freedmen's Bank failure back in the day, like in the 1880s. You know what I mean? Frederick Douglass spoke at one of them. So I'm trying to find it. It was referenced in the in that 150th anniversary of the Freedmen's Bank, the dude referenced this. I was like, what? So I'm gonna try to pull up the actual transcript and read it tomorrow so we can chop it up some more and break it down. So with that, y'all have a great rest of y'all day. Get some rest, get some dreams, start dreaming about y'all reparations and y'all 40 acres, and we're gonna keep it moving. Love y'all. Peace.